Hi, I'm Mike Beliveau, and today I'm back down in the shop. And I'd like to talk to you today about the guns used by Dr. John Holliday, better known as Doc Holliday, one of the more famous gunfighters of the Wild West. Really, thanks to Stuart Lake and the writer, and thanks to Hollywood. Doc Holliday is one of the most commonly associated names with the Wild West now. So, there's a lot of hype about Doc Holliday, a lot of things that certainly are not true. So in this video, I'm going to try to take a look at the guns that we can document for the most part that Doc Holliday actually used. Now, I am going to step outside of documented specimens in one case, which I'll explain myself. But for the most part, we're going to take a look at guns that we know that Doc really used, not the guns that maybe Hollywood ascribed to him. Now, John Henry Holliday was born in 1851 in Griffin, Georgia. He was born to a fairly well-to-do family, not truly wealthy, but quite well-to-do, very comfortable. His father had fought in the Mexican War honorably, and he basically rescued and took under his wing a Mexican boy that he brought home to his family, a boy who had been orphaned during the war. And to be honest with you, this act of kindness ended up having a devastating effect on his family, because that boy had tuberculosis, which he passed on to John Holliday's mother, who passed away. And also John himself picked up the disease. It didn't really manifest itself until he was pretty much in adulthood. But basically, tuberculosis ravaged that family because of an act of kindness on the part of Doc Holliday's father. So Doc Holliday, when he was known to us in the Wild West, was a 130-pound tubercular dentist. And if it wasn't for the tuberculosis, he probably would have gone on to have a normal dental career in Georgia and be someone that we would never have heard of. But as it turned out, when he was 20, his tuberculosis began really flaring up. And after graduating from dental school, he was advised to go out west where there was a drier climate. And he was really given only months to live at the time, though he did live like another 15 years after that. But, he was told to pack up and go out west, which he did. And he first hung a shingle up in Texas, in Dallas. Now, tuberculosis is not a pretty disease. It attacks the lungs. It causes racking, bloody coughs, lots of sputum that's just bloody. It's not a very sanitary disease. And it's not a disease that dental patients appreciate, because a dentist obviously is hovering right over a patient's open mouth. And if he is coughing and hacking and spitting up pieces of bloody lung, that is not something that dental patients appreciate. Consequently, Doc Holliday had a hard time making ends meet as a dentist in Texas, and therefore he ended up taking up gambling, where nobody really cares if you're coughing that much. They're too busy concentrating on the cards. So he really took up two things, gambling and drinking. And he took up the drinking to alleviate the pain of the disease. And he became a raging alcoholic and a professional gambler. Now, Doc Holliday, I would say, is best known for the events surrounding the OK Corral fight in Tombstone, Arizona in 1881. Certainly he had a career before that. Yeah, not that much of a career after that. But without a doubt, the events of the OK Corral and the Vendetta ride really cemented Doc Holliday in the minds of America, because he was a good friend of Wyatt Earp's. And Wyatt Earp became famous because of the OK Corral and the Vendetta ride. And eventually, Stuart Lake wrote a biography of him that was based on his conversations, supposedly, with Wyatt as an old man. But it's kind of a sensationalized, fictionalized account, and who can be sure how much of it is really correct. But at any rate, Stuart Lake's book became very popular. And Wyatt, in his old age, had become pretty good friends. He lived in part of the year in Los Angeles. And he became pretty good friends with the early movie crowd, people like Tom Mix, director John Ford. Even John Wayne knew Wyatt Earp as an elderly fellow. So the OK Corral got movie treatments a couple of times pretty early on. And Wyatt has been a continuing source of inspiration for the movie and TV crowd. And because of that, Doc Holliday has also become a known gunfighter of the Old West. Now, Doc has a reputation of having killed a dozen men or more. But that is frankly not true. As with so many of these guys, like Bat Masterson, who is known as one of the classic gunfighters. He probably only had one real killing gunfight in his life. A lot of these guys did not rack up the numbers that you would think, and I think TV and movies gives us a completely false view of the West. I mean, there's a very popular TV show, just as a segue, when I was a kid, was The Rifleman. And that was on for a number of years, 6 years, 5-6 years. And it starred Chuck Connors as the Rifleman, right? Well, someone did a count of the shooting incidents in The Rifleman while it was on. And Chuck Connors averaged 2.5 kills per episode. Okay, now that was on for like 5 or 6 years, right? And back then, seasons had over 30 episodes in them. So Lucas McCain, the Rifleman, on TV, killed literally hundreds of people. I mean, John Wesley Hardin, one of the most prolific gunfighters of the Old West, didn't come close to killing 100 people. Nowhere near. So I think in a lot of ways, Hollywood gives us an unrealistic expectation of the body count that these gunfighters actually racked up. And that's no different with Doc Holliday. He did not kill a dozen people. He didn't even shoot a dozen people. He probably didn't even shoot at a dozen people. Okay? So I kind of went through the literature as best I could. And, from what modern researchers have come up with, it's contrary to the Hollywood myth-making. Doc Holliday, it appears, was only in 5 confirmed gunfights during his 16 or so years in the West. The first one was on New Year's Day in 1875. Doc and a man named Charles Austin fired their pistols at each other in Dallas. Neither man was hit. A year later, in 1876, when Doc was 25 years old, he was on the losing side of a gunfight when he was shot and seriously wounded by Henry Kahn after quarreling over a card game. That's 2. Number 3, in October of 1880, Doc got into an argument with Johnny Tyler. Now, if you remember the movie Tombstone, Johnny Tyler was kind of a pathetic character who gets slapped around by Wyatt Earp and treated like a little boy by Doc Holliday.
What? Johnny Tyler! You madcap!
Doc?
Where you going with that shotgun?
I didn't know you was back in town.
Well, well.
How the hell are you?
Wyatt, I am rolling. Johnny, I apologize. I forgot you were there. You may go now.
Just leave that shotgun.
Okay, so the reality is a little bit different. He got into an argument with Johnny Tyler. Milt Joyce, who owned the saloon, broke up the fight, and he tossed Doc out. Doc came back with his gun, and he started shooting up the saloon. Now, did he hit Johnny Tyler? No, he did not. He hit Milt Joyce in the hand, and he shot a bartender in the big toe. Contrary to popular belief, Doc was a bad shot. And it'd be amazing if it was anything different, because generally he was so liquored up, he probably couldn't even see one target to aim at. So he was a bad shot. Unfortunately, he was an eager shot. And we see that several times. On October 26th, of course, 1881, we have the infamous fight at the OK Corral. And in that case, Doc used a shotgun to kill Tom McClowry. And he also shot Frank McClowry in the chest. Okay, that was certainly an instance of good shooting on Doc's part. And Doc got slightly wounded in the hip during that fight. Fifth and last fight, just a couple of years before he died, in Leadville, Colorado, he was in a fight with Billy Allen. Allen had threatened to kill him over an unpaid $5 loan. When Allen came after him, Doc pulled his pistol at close range, and he fired, hitting Allen in the arm. Holliday was subdued by bystanders before he could finish Allen off. That was it. His career as a gunfighter lasted just about 15 years. He passed away of tuberculosis in Glenwood Springs, in the Glenwood Hotel, on November 8th, 1887, and he was only 36 years old. So, despite the historical record to the contrary, Western myth remembers Doc Holliday as a much more formidable gunfighter than he really was. As newspaper editor Maxwell Scott said in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, "This is the West, sir. When the legend becomes fact, print the legend." So that's Doc's shooting scrapes in real life. Now, what guns did he use? And to come up with this, I tried to come up with guns that actually had some provenance. Guns that are around, that can be photographed, that have some provenance going with them. Provenance, I should say, not provenance. Provenance. Going with them, that attaches them to Doc Holliday. Some of them have better provenance than others. So let's take them in order. Western legends ascribe some pretty particular guns to Doc, and they may or may not be correct. There's one gun that can definitely be ascribed to Doc Holliday that has the best provenance, and that one, probably surprisingly to a lot of you, is a .36 caliber Colt model 1851 Navy revolver with a full 7.5-inch barrel. That was gifted to Doc by his uncle. In her 1988 book, Doc Holliday, A Family Portrait, Holliday family descendant Karen Holliday Tanner documents this Navy Colt and adds that Doc carried it through 1874 before cartridge revolvers replaced cap and ball revolvers. So that gun, which is serial number 198418, and as I said, was a gift by his uncle, Dr. John Stiles Holliday. that was kept by the Holliday McKay family after his death. It stayed in the family safe deposit box until it was sold in the mid 20th century. So that gun's got very good provenance. We know that gun existed. We know he used a Colt Navy revolver. The next gun that has pretty good provenance was Colt's single action army that Doc acquired in lieu of his Navy as a cartridge firing gun. Now, this gun, contrary to what you might think about Doc, had a 7.5-inch barrel. And apparently, Doc preferred long-barreled 6-guns. I believe Wyatt Earp says that to Stuart Lake, and it's been mentioned a couple of times by other, Holliday associates. This particular gun is pictured on page 182 of Joseph G. Rosa's book, The Age of the Gunfighter, and it's also pictured on page 49 of Guns of the Gunfighters by Doc O'Meara. And it's currently held by the Autry Museum of the American West in Los Angeles, California. So we can feel pretty good about that gun. So we've got a Colt Navy, 7.5-inch barrel. We've got a Colt single action army revolver in .45 Colt with a 7.5-inch barrel. Now, the next gun in the Holliday cannon is a little more difficult to pin down. Witnesses reported that Doc used a nickel-plated pistol at the OK Corral fight to shoot Frank McLaury. So that has been reported in the court inquests. But, what was it? A lot of people claim that it was a Model 1877 Colt double-action revolver called the Thunderer when they're in .41 caliber, the Lightning when they're in .38 caliber. No one today can say with certainty that Doc owned a Colt Model 1877 double-action revolver, because there is not a revolver around with John Holliday engraved on the backstrap, or that was kept by his cousin Susie for 100 years in the sock drawer after he passed away, with a letter from John saying, "Hold on to my Colt, Susie, until I come back," and nothing like that. So it's a little bit hard to nail this down. I personally think the likelihood is that he did own one. And even though the case is circumstantial, I think a case can be made for a Colt self-cocker. So, first of all, Western history buffs know that on October 10th, 1880, Doc shot and wounded saloon owner Milt Joyce and his bartender with a revolver that was described as a self-cocker, meaning it was a double-action revolver. In 1880, that would almost certainly have been a Model 1877 Colt. Smith & Wesson was not making any double-action revolvers yet, unless it was a British revolver in this country, which it could be, but it's relatively unlikely. It's probably an 1877 Colt. Second thing in its favor is one of Holliday's descendants, Karen Holliday Tanner, claims that Doc carried a .41 caliber Colt double-action Thunderer on August 19th, 1884, when he shot but did not manage to kill Billy Allen. Remember, he shot him in the arm in Leadville, Colorado. Now, the Leadville newspaper claimed the gun was a short-barreled, single-action Colt 4440 revolver. So which gun was it? And, newspapers make mistakes sometimes. Well, Stuart Lake, in his Earp biography in 1931, Wyatt Earp, Frontier Marshal, he has Earp saying that during the OK Corral fight, Doc killed Tom McLaury using a barreled shotgun. And after that, Doc jerked the nickel-plated Colts, which was for years his favorite weapon, and used it to shoot Frank McLaury. Okay. Well, he had a Thunderer in 1884. Might he have had that in 1881? Probably. I think it's quite possible. All that Wyatt Earp says was that it was a Colt. So the question is, was it a Colt single-action model or a Colt double-action model? If you look at what his relatives said, we know that Doc had a blued single-action Colt. And a relative also says that he had that double-action Colt in 1880. Right? So he had the Colt in 1880, the double-action, when he shot Milt Joyce. He had a double-action, according to his relatives, in 1884 when he shot Billy Allen. So why would he not have had that Colt Thunderer in 1881 at the OK Corral? I mean, we can't say for sure, but in my personal opinion, I would say it is quite likely that Doc had a .41 caliber Thunderer Colt 1877 double-action revolver. And what's more, I would guess that if he had one, it would have been the longer-barreled model, because we know that he actually preferred longer-barreled six guns. So that's a gun with no provenance. That's my take on it. I am voting in favor of the double-action Colt. Now, the last gun attributed to Doc Holliday that has a decent provenance is a Remington .41 caliber double derringer. Now, this gun was reputed to be a gift from his longtime paramour, Catherine Heroni Cummings, also known as Big Nose Kate, also known as Katie Elder. And by the way, Kate herself, in later years, declared that nobody ever called her Big Nose Kate. Though I think Wyatt Earp really did. But she certainly did not appreciate that nickname, as not very many women would, I'm sure. So she gave him a derringer. And that derringer is engraved on the backstrap of the grips, to Doc from Kate. Now, that derringer was amongst Doc's belongings when he died of tuberculosis in 1887 in the Hotel Glenwood in Glenwood Springs, Colorado. As reported by the Post-Independent newspaper, the gun passed to a local bartender as partial payment for Holliday's funeral expenses, which he had footed. It remained a family heirloom in the bartender's family until it was sold in 1968. So that gun has fairly good provenance. I mean, certainly it could have been faked by the family. But more than likely that was Doc Holliday's gun. That was probably his self-defense gun while he was invalided in that hotel. He probably held on to that. He had probably sold, his other guns at that point to make expense money to stay there. That is the full story of Doc Holliday's guns. I hope you enjoyed that. All right, I've got to make a little correction here. I had already finished this video and loaded it up to YouTube, waiting to be dropped. When I realized, doing a little more research, that I had an error in it. Now, I'm going to tell you, there like with all of these gunfighters of the Old West, the famous ones, there are a lot of phony guns out there attributed to them, fakes. And I tried my best not to include those in here. So that's why you're not seeing things like Doc's 1851 Navy cartridge conversion, that Guns of the Old West, Guns of the Gunfighters attributed to him, because that has been proven to be a fake, as have a lot of other guns that were attributed to Doc. So I really tried to keep those cleared out of here. But I did make a mistake, because the derringer that had the inscription, to Doc from Kate, that I thought had pretty good provenance, turns out that was a fake too. And I'm not the only one who got surprised, because the Glenwood Museum paid a lot of money for that. And as it turns out, they got took. And I got took, but now I know it's a fake, and I don't want to subject you guys to it. So I'm just correcting this video right here. And I'm sorry I included it. Let me just tell you, this is going to be, my paid advertisement, I guess, paying myself. As a lot of you know, I was laid up last year. I suffered a bad fall. Severely broke my right arm. Very severely dislocated my left shoulder and did a ton of nerve damage. Really injured my right hip. I got hurt pretty bad, and I was unable to make videos for a good 6 months. In fact, I was in the hospital, and then I was in a nursing home, and I was months away from home, and it was not very pleasant, because I had no use of my arms at all at first. I couldn't move them. I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't do anything. It was bad. So it was quite a while before I could do videos, and I've got to admit, because of the nerve damage and the damage to my hip, which in a couple of months I'm going to be talking to my doctors about whether or not I should be looking at a hip replacement. It's severely limited my ability to do videos, and the channel lost a lot of ground during that time. And therefore it lost a lot of revenue at a time when I really needed the revenue. I mean, luckily I have very good insurance. And my out-of-pocket expenses, compared to the total expenses, my total expenses have been over $800,000 for this. I mean, modern medicine is expensive. I mean, they worked some miracles. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to move at all. They should have just euthanized me. 100 years ago, they would have had to have euthanized me. They wouldn't have been able to do anything for me. I'd have been basically almost a quadriplegic without the use of my limbs in any meaningful way. So I'm very grateful to modern medicine, but it's not cheap. Now, it did not cost me $800,000, thank God. But it has cost me, a fair amount of money. And therefore, the money I get from YouTube matters more to me, maybe than it would have before. So, like I said, the channel lost a lot of ground, and, I'd like your help in picking that ground back up. So, if you are watching this and you're not a subscriber and you liked it, hit like, make a comment, and I hope you'll subscribe. If you are a subscriber, I would love for you to find some of your friends who are not and forward them this video or whatever your favorite video is on the channel. And tell them, hey, if you like this, look at some more of his videos and maybe subscribe. And that would help me out. I'd like to get viewership, back up. I've got a lot of subscriptions, but of course a lot of people are not actively subscribers, as you know. So I need more people watching the videos, basically. And that always gets tough with gun videos anyway, because sometimes my stuff tends to get ghosted by YouTube, not recommended to people. So anyway, you can do that for me. That'd be a big help. Make a comment. That helps with the algorithm. And, I've got a Patreon. I don't do much with Patreon, I have to say. I don't have specials or anything like that. And something I could always consider. I'm never sure how to use this stuff. But But if you wanted to contribute through Patreon, that would be great. I understand if you don't want to. I'm perfectly fine with that. You know, I'm just happy to have you subscribe. So anyway, that's enough from me pounding the tin cup. I won't do this again for quite a while because I hate doing it. But once again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, I'll see you again next time. Until then, bye.